Alrighty, welcome everybody. I'm very proud. My name is Tim Quirk. I'm the head of global content programming for Android, and I'm very happy and proud to be here with Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols. All right, so Steve and the Sex Pistols don't really need much of an introduction, but what's really interesting to note, I think, is that this band, insanely influential, like genuinely revolutionary band, put out basically 4 singles and 1 album in just a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
All right, and it had a massive world-shattering impact. So we're going to talk about that album today because it's coming up in a 35th anniversary reissue. Somehow they turned it into a 4-disc set. I don't quite know how that works, so we'll get into
one
that.
album, I know.
Yeah.
But
all right, we'll figure out how they did that. But I figured we should sort of rewind a little bit and start at something like the beginning.
okay.
So I want to talk a little bit about how the band formed, what happened before the album got made, and then the album's impact.
Okay.
So basically, the band started as your and Paul Cook's band, The Strand, right? That was in the early 70s?
Yeah, that was, we were kind of just goofing around. I acquired a bunch of musical equipment and gave the drums to Paul Cook because he was my best friend. And I've known Paul Cook, the drummer, since I was like 10. And we had a couple of other guys from school who played keyboards and a bass player. None of us could play a note, by the way. And they kind of went to the wayside, and me and Paul kind of carried on a little bit longer. And there was another guy called Wally Nightingale. He was the Pete Best of the Sex Pistols. He could actually play a little bit of guitar, and I was singing at the time, and I didn't want to sing, but I was just going along with it, you know. And got to a point where it was just me, Paul, Glen Matlock, who used to work in Malcolm McLaren's shop on the weekends, and Wally. That was the 4 of us. And at that point, we actually did one show on the King's Road at Salter's Cafe. And I was terrified, and I was singing, and we did about 5 songs, and I hated it. Singing wasn't for me. And that's when Malcolm was getting involved, and we originally were called QT Jones and the Sex Pistols. I don't know what that means.
And I noticed you said you acquired some equipment. You didn't say you bought some equipment.
You know what I mean.
All right, well, tell them what you mean.
Huh?
Tell them what you mean. Where'd you acquire it? How'd you acquire it?
I'm scared to tell them.
I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is up.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay, in that case. Well, I was a kleptomaniac when I was a teenager. Through bad upbringing with my parents, wasn't the best parents. Very poor, working class, and I used to watch them still, so I kind of picked up the knack, you know, so. Plus I enjoyed it, it was like a buzz too, you know. And I went away to various homes. One was in a place called Banstead. It was in the country, south of London. And I was there for a year and a half, and I actually enjoyed it better than being at home. And they let us watch Top of the Pops. Top of the Pops was a show once a week where they showed you the top 20, whatever was going on at the time. And I was 15 or 16, somewhere around there. And I saw Roxy Music on there doing a song called Virginia Plain, and that changed my life, really. I saw that and I'm like, that's what I want to be. I want that, whatever that is, the glamour and the cool and the songs. And I mean, obviously I've seen Top of the Pops a million times before that, but for some reason when Roxy Music did that song, that kind of was a turning point to me. So when I got out of my rehabilitation from being in Banstead, I proceeded to steal a load of musical equipment. And that was my connection to music, you know. it was kind of a perverted way of being closer to the band. I wasn't so much stealing it because I wanted it to sell. I just wanted a part of something they had. It was kind of weird, you know, but that was my best thinking at the time. And acquired way more than I needed of equipment. And musical shops, by the way. Many musical shops that I broke into, which were a lot easier back in the early 70s. You know, they didn't have they said they had alarms, but all the time I knocked them in, nothing ever went off. So, you know, and no one had cameras like now. Like, you know, I couldn't break in here. You know, I'd be screwed in 2 minutes. You know.
All right. So you said you didn't like singing. So the band was looking for a singer, and I've heard, I don't know how much of this is true. I heard that Sylvain was offered the gig, Richard Hell was offered the gig, and Kevin Rowland, who later went onto Dexy's Midnight Runners, actually auditioned.
As a singer?
True? Yeah.
We never auditioned any of them guys.
All right. So tell me how you met Johnny.
Well, he used to go in the shop, Malcolm McLaren's shop, which was a hangout to certain types. You know, it wasn't like any other shops that was on the King's Road at the time. At the time, it was basically shops where guys would wear suits with flares and tashes. That's what was going on at the time. And there was about 3 shops that wasn't like that. That was Alcazur's, that sold clothes to like Mark Bolan, like glam clothes. Granny Takes a Trip, that was owned by 2 American dudes. That was a mess. They were always shooting dope in the back. I used to go in there so many times and them guys would be in the back, and literally you just go, I'll have that and I'll have that, I'll see you later. And they had no idea. Perfect. Great clothes though, at the time. And then there was Malcolm's shop, which had various names. Originally it was Too Fast to Live, Too Young to Die, then it was Let It Rock, then it was Seditionaries or Sex. I don't know what order, forget. But it was one of them places, when it was Let It Rock, that they had couches in there and a jukebox, and I used to hang out, and I actually became friends with Malcolm McLaren way before the band started. And John was one of the guys who came in there on the weekend, you know. And this was at the time when we had the Wally guy and me, and we would be rehearsing, and Malcolm started getting involved a little bit, and we decided that I shouldn't sing, and I was thrilled about that. So I got pushed on guitar, and then we auditioned singers, and John was one of the guys I spotted coming in the shop that he looked a lot different. He had the green hair and short green hair, and he had I Hate Pink Floyd t-shirt. It was a Pink Floyd t-shirt, but he's put underneath it, I hate. And he had his own kind of thing going on with safety pins and all that, and he looked great. I said we should try that guy out, you know. And we did, and we were actually auditioning him in the shop. We made him sing along to the Alice Cooper 18, and he was just taking the piss out of it, you know. But he definitely had something, and we tried him out, and it kind of worked straight away. So got rid of Wally, me on guitar, and then we started rehearsing.
All right. And so set the scene in early 70s, mid 70s in London. I think most people in the audience look old enough to remember it, but the milieu, the economic situation and what was going on with the classes seems like it was so integral to what you guys wound up becoming. So
Yeah, it's kind of like it is now.
So explain that.
Well, back then in 75, there was a lot of strikes. There was a lot of people out of work, and it was pretty grim in the country at the time, you know. So whether that was the reason, it was just a coincidence that we kind of came along at that time. We didn't come along because of oh look, everyone's out of work, let's start a band. It wasn't like that. It was just the timing, you know. And it was great. I mean, I didn't really pay a lot of attention to all the strikes and all that stuff. It never bothered me because I always stole, so I didn't have to get a job to feed myself, you know.
So what was the, so now you've got
I'm not proud of being a thief, by the way.
All right.
You're the one glamorizing it.
I just asked you about
Okay.
it.
I don't steal anymore.
All right. So now you've got the heart of the band. You've got Paul on drums, Glen on bass. You're playing guitar, and Johnny singing. He was Johnny Lydon originally. Who dubbed him Johnny Rotten?
I did.
And why was that?
Because of his teeth.
All right.
Were rotten.
See, the American conception is everybody's teeth were rotten back then.
Well, English people's teeth were rotten.
Yeah.
Well, they were.
Okay. But his were worse than most?
His were worse than most, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what was the first song this band wrote?
Original song was, I think it was 17,
Okay.
which was, I don't know, it was called Lazy Sod as well. But that was a tune that I'd kind of, it's just a straightforward Buddy Holly kind of tune, really. And John just put some, you know, his usual trademark lyrics on it. It's not the, you know, it's not filler, but it's not the best song ever written, you know.
And at what point did you write a song that you or everyone in the band was like, oh, wait a minute, we've got something here?
I think Anarchy was the first one that we kind of thought we had something going on. Yeah, Anarchy in the UK.
All right. So you had a quote around at that time. You said, "We're not into music, we're into chaos."
Chaos.
Tell me about that.
Well, I remember it actually. It was we did a show opening up for a band called Eddie and the Hot Rods at the Marquee, Wardour Street. And we've done about maybe 5 or 6 shows beforehand using my equipment. Pardon?
Your equipment.
My equipment. And this was the first show we were opening up for this band, and they actually had monitors. We never had monitors before. And there was we never sound checked. We never had a roadie, anything. And this band was been going a while, kind of they were part of this pub rock movement that was the thing that was happening there, all these bands, a circuit where all these bands would play pubs and stuff. And so John started singing, and I think it was the first time he ever heard himself, and he was terrified, you know? So he kicked one of the monitors in the stage because he didn't want to hear himself. And then it started a big scuffle, and the band who we were opening up for were pissed off and all that. And it was just a big mess, you know? And then some guy came up to me afterwards and asked me that question. And for some reason I just said, we're not into music, we're into chaos. I don't know why I said that, but that's what it seemed like. The gig, the show was kind of crazy, you know?
Okay.
And people didn't like us. No one liked us in the beginning. I've got to point that out. You know, I used to throw up sometimes because I was so nervous, because you didn't know what was going to get thrown at you. I mean, literally, that was what was going on.
And yet very shortly, I mean, it wasn't too long before wherever you guys went in England and played a show, it seems like even if there weren't a lot of people in the crowd, they all went off and formed their own bands.
So they say, yeah.
Do you not believe them?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you know, the 24-hour party people is a good example when we played the Lesser Free Trade Hall in Manchester. Supposedly Morrissey started. Go on, you know the list.
Buzzcocks, Joy Division, and Morrissey was apparently in there.
Yeah. So.
And Marky Smith.
So there you go, you know.
All right. So there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of chaos and fighting and stuff going on. Malcolm McLaren and some other people were trying to put this, you know, trying to say it was all part of, was recapitulating what the Situationists had been doing in the late 60s. Did you ever buy any of that?
No.
Okay.
He was just trying to, had a big ego, Malcolm.
Okay.
I like Malcolm, he was a friend of mine, but he was trying to rewrite history, you know, like so many people do after the fact. I'm sure the Bible's got a lot of bullshit things in there. You know what I mean? Rewritten things. I mean, who wrote it originally? the Bible? Who knows, right? But you know what I mean? I mean, everyone does it. When you watch the Civil War on A&E, there's that guy, he talks like he was there. Me and Robert E. Lee, we did this and blah, blah. Everyone likes to kind of put their twist on something that's happened and then go back and kind of quirk it to make it look cool or something.
So at the time, how much thought were you guys putting into what you were doing? Did you have a goal?
No, we didn't. There was no goal. We were just a band, and you know, with different lyrics, not the normal lyrics, and not the normal aggression played. The aggression, mainly, a lot of people say, oh, we were angry. Yeah, I'm sure I was angry. I didn't have a great upbringing. But more of it was out of lack of knowing how to play. So when you don't know how to play, you tend to kind of just go harder, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
All right. So I'm gonna read you a quote. This is from, I think it was Paul Nelson. It was the Rolling Stone review of Never Mind the Bollocks when it first came out, and it's just, there's 2 lines in it that really jumped out at me. Any theory of destruction as highfalutin as this also contains the seeds of freedom and even optimism. Anyone who cares to hate this much is probably not a nihilist, but a moralist and a romantic as well. Does that ring true to you?
God, that was a lot of big words in there, man. Can you simplify that?
Oh, he's basically saying you might listen to it and it sounds angry and hateful, but it's actually optimistic and it's got a moral to it.
The album?
You feel that way?
Yeah, I think, you know, looking back on it 35 years later, I think it's just a true album with no agenda, for sure. There was no agenda. There was no agenda to, oh, let's get a single in the charts. Oh, let's do this, like so many bands do, from then till now, like a strategy with an album. There was no strategy. We had these songs, we'd written them. We'd been playing around in London and up, you know, various places, not many shows, and it was time to record them, and we just, there was no agenda at all, you know, and I think that's what's pure about it.
Well, it's always interesting to me because, you know, I was I think 13 or 14-year-old kid in the suburbs of New York City. When I first heard the record, I was in junior high school, somebody played it at a party, and I'd read a lot about punk rock, and I'd heard a lot about punk rock, but I hadn't heard any actual punk rock.
Yeah.
There was no internet, there was barely college radio back then.
You had to work hard to be a fan back then,
and when
which was lacking now, by the way. Sorry, go on.
No, that's all right. And when I first heard it, I remember expecting to hear some, you know, like otherworldly thing. And I remember actually being vaguely disappointed. It sounded great, but I said to my friend, I was like, this is just rock and roll. What's the big deal? So
Right.
that was my initial impression, just, you know, as a kid in the States. But it's still, even today, it does sound blisteringly different than anything else that was coming out at the time.
Yeah.
So how do you achieve that?
What?
Just the sound.
I don't know. It was just a rock and roll album, but when we came to the States and we played down south, and that they didn't see it as, oh, this is just a rock and roll album. You know, so many people have come up to me and said they were at our last show at Winterland, you know, but they weren't there really. So years later, you should get these people come up to you, yeah, man, I'm a big fan, blah, blah, blah. And they just weren't. They probably hated us when at that point, 78, 77 when it came out. And it was different than what was going on at the time. You know, Boston, Journey. I mean, that's what was going on, you know. And Sex Pistols was a little bit different.
Right.
You know, don't get me wrong now, I am a fan of Journey and Boston.
All right.
For real.
I believe you.
I used to sneak off closet Journey fan.
So to me, there's always been sort of 2 aspects to the Sex Pistols. And the bigger aspect is just, you know, everything that was going on culturally around you guys. And then the music was almost smaller than that in a way, or at least it wasn't considered as much. So I want to talk a lot about the music on the record. For a bit. So to start with, who's playing bass? Because there's all kinds of conflicting reports. By the time the record came out, Glen Matlock had left the band, Sid Vicious has joined, but is he on the record at all?
Sid?
Yeah.
Sid is fumbling around underneath God Save the Queen and Bodies.
Okay.
And basically the whole album was played by me, bass. Anarchy in the UK has Glen Matlock on it because we recorded that before we got the boot.
Okay. But everything else is you?
Yeah.
All right. And did you know how to play bass?
Nope.
All right. But you knew better than Sid?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could go dun 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 dun.
All right.
And that's basically all it is.
All right. So let's talk about it. You mentioned Anarchy in the UK before as sort of being, the song where you felt things clicking. So tell me a bit about that song, how it came together and how you recorded it.
Well, we initially recorded it. Could I get another one of these? Thank you. We had a guy when we went on the road called Dave Goodman. He was like our sound guy that we had. See, we didn't have any guidelines to go by because we never seen it before on the other side of it, So we run into this guy. He was like an old hippie and pothead, smoking all the time. And he did our live shows, him and this other guy. And then it came time to do some demos, and we did these demos in this rehearsal room that I lived in Denmark Street in Soho. We acquired it. I lived upstairs, and we had the room downstairs, and we acquired it off a band called Bandfinger. That we bought it off of them. I don't know if we bought it or we leased it. So everything was done in there. All the writing, all the rehearsing. This album called Spunk, it was our first demos. It was like we were experimenting, on a track called Submission. I'm like literally blowing through a teapot to make a bubble noise to get a bubbly effect. It was all stuff like that. Sonically, it sounded like demos, And so we got a record deal with EMI, and so we went to record Anarchy, and we carried on using this guy, Dave Goodman, who was still smoking 1,000 joints a day. And we were in there laying it down, and this guy we could never get this guy happy. We did it 1,000 times. No, you got to do it more. Finally we said, you know what? You're out of here, mate. We're going to get someone else. We had to. He made us do it. We didn't want to do it because we liked him, but he didn't know what he was doing. So then it was time to pick a producer. And I was a big fan of Roxy music, like I said, and the guy who produced Roxy music was a guy called Chris Thomas. So it was like, let's get this guy. He's good. And then that's what happened. Him and this engineer called Bill Price, they got hold of us. We went in this studio, Wessex studio in Islington. We laid down the track, me and Glenn and Paul, 3 of us. I think John might have been doing a vocal in a booth. And we put it down about 2 or 3 times. He goes, okay, got it. And it was not, he knew, he was a producer. He's done it before. So, what was the question?
You're telling me about Anarchy in the UK, how
Yeah.
it came together, how you recorded it.
All right, so that's it, yeah.
All right.
So, and then, he got me to layer some tracks down. Put a lot of work. We put a lot of work into Never Mind the Bollocks. People think, oh, we're a punk band. We just went in, and it's done. No, we probably spent more time doing that than most unpunk bands do, like proper bands were doing.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then God Save the Queen was another big one for you.
Yeah, mate.
Give him his water, or his whatever the hell's in there.
Oolong ginger tea
All right.
is today's special.
So God Save the Queen, sort of another landmark track for you guys. Was that the second single?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
That's when we was with A&M. That's when EMI had gotten rid of us, and A&M stepped in.
That's quite a feat to put out one album, but be signed to 3 different labels, signed and dropped by 2 labels, and signed to 3 labels overall.
Yeah.
How'd you manage that?
And we was with, I think we still are with Warner Brothers in America. I don't know. It wasn't my idea to get fired.
All right. But something happened at A&M's offices.
Yes.
What exactly?
Oh.
Different stories.
Well, it's kind of naughty.
We're adults.
Well, it started at 7 in the morning. We did this fake signing of the contract outside Buckingham Palace. And we, 7 in the morning, we were already started with the vodka, and so we went from there to some other place in this limo, and then some other place. We went to the studio to listen to the finished mix of God Save the Queen, and then we had a fight in the limo, all of us. We were drunk, hammered at like 3 in the afternoon. And then it was some bright idea to go to the A&M offices. We went in there and, spraying shit on the walls, and I had sex with a girl in the bathroom, and one of the employees, it was just a mess, basically, and they thought, oh shit, what have we signed here? They didn't realize that it wasn't an act, this is what these guys do. It probably wouldn't have happened like that if we wouldn't been drinking since 7 in the morning, but yeah, shit happens, man. Shit happens.
All right, so God Save the Queen. Tell me about that song, how did it come together?
Well, like I said, John was always in the corner scribbling lyrics while me, Glen and Paul were just thrashing out tunes, and Glen came down with his tune, sounded like the Beatles, and then I got hold of the riff and changed it to make it sound like the Sex Pistols, and Paul got hold of it, and then we just worked it out. We worked things out pretty quickly, funny enough, considering, now looking back. And John would have these words, and he'd say, hang on, let me try this, blah, 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 boom. Next thing you know, there's a song,
And at the time, I mean, now people, I'm not British, so I don't know, but there doesn't seem to be quite the same level of respect for the royal family that maybe there was in the 70s. So how was it received when it came out?
Not good by a lot of people, was offended, Plus it was, coincidentally, again, it was the time for, what Jubilee was it one? It was a gold, silver?
Silver?
I don't know. One of them Jubilees. And, it was so offensive that they couldn't put it at #1. They left a blank spot when it came out. Or in fact, some people put Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart.
What was the song, Rod Stewart song?
I can't remember which song, I just know it was a Rod
That's going to drive me crazy now. Oh no.
Somebody Google it.
Someone Google it, we're in the right office. Anyway, it will come in a bit.
Okay.
But that showed you how offensive it was at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And people wanted to beat us up.
And you mentioned that Glen made it sound like the Beatles.
Is it first cut is the deepest? Rod Stewart, I think that's it. Could be wrong, never mind.
We'll get an answer.
Sorry.
So you mentioned that Glen Matlock made it sound like the Beatles, and Glen Matlock was eventually no longer in the band and Sid joined. So what happened with Glen?
Ah, poor Glen. I don't know, he just wasn't going in the direction we was going in. It changed the dynamics a lot for the songwriting, for sure. And just, his bass playing, he was a good bass player. But he just didn't seem to want to go down the road we were going down, And I think McLaren had a bit of manipulating in that to get him out and get Sid, because Sid did look great. I mean, he was your classic. I mean, you couldn't get a better image guy for the Sex Pistols, Him and John together looked great together, It was that classic Mick and Keith look. Unfortunately, he couldn't play bass, which is not his fault, but he was a fan. He used to come to a lot of the shows beforehand, and I was a bit up. I wouldn't say like, I'm sticking bits of tape on this bass, like, now put your finger there and then go there. I didn't want to be doing that. I wanted to be concentrating on my own disabilities of playing guitar,
So after Glen left, how many more songs did you guys write?
Holidays in the Sun. Belson Was a Gas. I didn't write that.
All right.
I think that was it.
Okay. Pretty Vacant's another one that I wanted to touch on, because that's one of the standouts on the album, I think.
Yeah,
So tell me how that one came together.
same way.
Okay.
I think maybe John and Sid, John and Glenn might have done that around someone's bedroom, because I think it was around Glenn's bedroom, because I remember John was always moaning like, don't ever let me do that again. Write a song with Glen Matlock in his house. It wasn't a good memory for him.
Yeah.
So I think that was the original where it started, and then it was brought down the studio, and then it was Sex Pistolized. But John wrote all the lyrics.
Yeah.
You know, he wrote all the lyrics.
Right. So the record came out, I think it was 10/28/77. You guys would be broken up in 3 or 4 months. So I want to talk a little bit about the aftermath of the album. Specifically, when you guys came to the States, you mentioned this before, I don't know how intentional it was, but apparently Malcolm McLaren had booked you guys in outside of the mainstream sort of touring circuit clubs where he knew you'd have a hostile audience. I never saw you guys live, but I did see a couple of films. It had a lot of footage of those shows, and it was wild watching it, because they weren't really concerts. They were more like confrontations.
Yeah.
So tell me what that was like going through that.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
Not fun at all. The whole experience, coming to America was completely what we wasn't used to, even if we were playing in, places that kind of wanted to see the band. It was, I loved it when I first came to America, but we wasn't doing it. We got off the plane somewhere, New York, and then we got on a tour bus and went to Atlantic. There was like, all the time, there must have been at least 50 people following us, from the FBI to Weed. What was that like? What was that magazine back then?
Cream?
No, it was like all about drugs. I don't know. High Times. Good job. They'd be following us. There'd be, the roadies were like Vietnam vets who were like crazy. There was people trying to film Sid shooting up, which I think there actually is footage of that. And it was just like, it was intense, And there was loads of media who would follow us the whole time we were in America. And it was bizarre. And our first show was in Atlanta. I remember having the flu, and the one thing that did stick out was how much better looking the girls were in America, and how eager to please they was. Unlike in England, where they're all ugly and spotty and think they're doing you a favour to have sex,
So
that's what stuck out in my mind.
Okay.
I don't know what stuck out in the other guys.
All right. How much actual playing happened during the shows? How many songs could you even get through?
We get through, we get through a set, Never Mind the Bollocks, basically, maybe with a couple of covers. But it wasn't fun.
Yeah.
Sid wasn't really playing bass, and that kind of deteriorated through the. How many shows did we do? Like 12 or something?
Yeah, it was just a handful.
Yeah, and they were all in dodgy places. The only one was in San Francisco that made sense.
Right, and then that one didn't last very long, and basically Johnny quit on stage. So what was that like?
Well, I don't think Johnny quit on stage. He didn't want to quit,
Okay.
but I wanted to quit
All right.
afterwards.
Okay. Well, tell me about that
Pardon?
final show. What's your recollection of it?
Well, I was sick again. I had the flu again. I don't know why I kept getting sick. Maybe I was nervous. I don't know. But it was a disaster, man. We were playing it. I don't know, the Winterland. I don't know how many. It was like 5,000 people. It's actually the biggest show we ever played. All the other shows we did were in like halls, cowboy places. And there was no camaraderie between the band. The crowd thought it was great, and we were playing like shit. and it made no sense, and I was like, I've had enough of this. That's me though.
Okay.
I run. That's how I deal with things, and that's what I did.
And where'd you wind up right after that?
We ran to Brazil.
Okay.
And well, we was meant to go there anyway to film. We were meant to do some shows there as the Sex Pistols, and Ronnie Biggs, the great train robber, was going to open up for us, you know. So that the Pistols ended in San Francisco, but me and Paul and Malcolm went to Brazil and carried on filming the Great Rock and Roll Swindle, the movie we were kind of doing at the time, you know. And I had a great time there. It was great. Brazil was great, man. I love that place. Bubble butts and cocaine.
And then what was it like after, so Sex Pistols split up and you continued your music career. What was it like playing with other musicians and having the professionals and other bands after the Sex Pistols?
I wasn't a happy camper.
Yeah.
You know, I got involved in drugs a lot, and I was miserable, you know. It might look like I was having a good time, but really, I was a lost soul. And I've been sober now, I'll be 22 years in October. 11 years off cigarettes. I'll be 12 years next month off cigarettes. And all I do now is eat.
All right. And and tell me about Jonesys Jukebox.
Well, there was two Jonesys Jukebox. There was one on Indy 1031 that obviously is defunct, which I did for 5 years. It started organically and it turned into something that a lot of people enjoyed. I enjoyed it. It was fun, and then that ended. And then about a year or so later, I don't know how long, I got where I am now. I'm on K-Rock. It's called Jonesys Jukebox. It's on Sunday night from 7 to 9 p.m. And I've been doing that for be 2 years next month. And I basically, the gist of it is I just play new music with physically CDs and try and turn people onto new bands and stuff.
And how do you find new music that excites you?
Well, at this point, from doing it for almost 2 years, people send me a lot of stuff. I have a few little hipsters who know what's going on, who send me stuff and new bands, and I enjoy doing it.
And so this year, I'm curious, what are some new bands you've heard this year that you really admire?
Well, there's a lot of, there's so many bands. Who did I play yesterday? Aerial Pinks, Graffiti, you heard of them? Tame Impala, I like them, because they're kind of original to me. They're not just copying what's gone before, they're kind of, you know, you ain't gonna find it in Walmart, but I still find it interesting, bands like that. There's a lot of bands, but there's no movement, you know what I mean? Which there should be some kind of movement. It shouldn't be the Sex Pistols 35 years later.
Well, speaking of the Sex Pistols 35 years later, I'm curious how you feel about the Sex Pistols being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a joke, isn't it?
Kinda, yeah.
But I got my statue still in Cleveland.
Okay.
I was thinking of getting it and selling it on eBay.
I like that idea.
Or maybe I should say, let me get the others for the boys and sell all 4 of them.
All right.
I don't know. Yeah.
At this point, I'm going to open it up to the audience. Anybody have any questions you want to ask? Just wander up to the microphone. And while we wait for someone to get up the courage to do that, I'll just ask you, tell me about the Bill Grundy interview. Kind of seminal moment in the Sex Pistols' career filled with seminal moments.
Well, if you don't know who Bill Grundy is, it was a TV show. There was 2 stations at the time, back in '75, whenever it's 6, 7, I don't know. And it was at 6 o'clock. Uh-oh, someone getting bold?
Yeah, I'm getting bold.
Go on then, just get on with it.
I don't want to interrupt it, but...
Shall I finish this
You can
question?
finish your answer, yeah.
Okay. We were rehearsing to do the Anarchy in the UK tour and promote Anarchy in the UK. EMI sent a limo down to where we were rehearsing, and the guy said, we're going to the Today show. That was the show that this guy, Bill Grundy, was on. And we're going to talk about the tour and single. Queen was supposed to do it, because we were on the same label, EMI. But for some reason cancelled it, so they quickly got us in there. So we get there, and like I said, there was two channels. Everyone used to watch this show, eating their dinner at 6 o'clock. They put us in a green room. I went to the fridge. There was like all these bottles of Blue Nun, it was kind of wine. So I'm nervous, terrified, because we're going on TV. So I'm guzzling them. And then by the time we went on, this guy obviously had no interest in talking about the tour. He was like the classic interviewer of that time, the 60s. You know, like when you see the Beatles being interviewed in the 60s and 70s, these interviews kind of talk down to you, like derogatory. You know what I mean? So you got all this money, like, you know, they're like, it's ridiculous. So this guy just got what he was dishing out, and we didn't go there like we're going to swear on the show. He started, you know, making us look stupid, and then he got what he deserved, you know.
Right.
We didn't know the swearing was going out live. I thought they had buttons for that, you know.
Yep.
Hello, mate.
Hi. So I'm kind of curious about how you decided to learn to play the guitar. I mean, you mentioned you went to go see Roxy Music, and that inspired you, and so you acquired some musical instruments. And so I imagine some kid with some musical instruments, and now what do? Do you have a friend that teaches you how to play guitar? Did you go to the library?
Well,
how many
actually,
hours a day did you practice?
Well, that's a good question, because I actually didn't start playing guitar till 3 months before we did our first show. And how I did that was through speed, and these pills called Mandrex, which I'm sure no one knows, but they're like the equivalent of Quaaludes. They're like Quaaludes. Anyway, I used to get from this quack in Harley Street. Everyone used to go. Every deviant used to go to this doctor. He was just a quack. He'd just be like, ah. And it was like a diet program, you know. Black Beauties and Mandrex, like 60 of each, you know. And so I would be in Denmark Street, literally I'd take one in the morning and I'd be like this for 12 hours. And playing along to records, and that's how I learned. I didn't know what I was doing.
Just by ear and just...
Yeah, I'd just play along to certain records, New York Dolls, I'd listen to The Faces.
You know about different chords and chord
No, I
changes
kind of
and...
knew a couple of chords from the guy Wally, but I couldn't carry a tune. It was just one of them things. You know, speed's great for that. You should try it.
No comment.
I'm sure I had ADD
No.
back then, you know, but that would like make you focus like crazy, you know.
And so, then did you continue that intensity through your whole Sex Pistols? Do you still play the guitar? Do you still?
Do I still play guitar?
Yeah. Do you still like practice intensively?
No,
or
you're kidding
no?
me. I couldn't care less. I got acoustic that I play now and again. My thing is to figure out more chords, you know, like Beatle chords, you know, like, you know, all good ones. That's what I like doing now in my old age.
All right. Next.
What band did your favorite cover of Anarchy?
Whose version did I like best, you mean?
Whose version? Yeah.
Of Anarchy?
I mean, besides your own.
Oh.
Megadeth?
No, I mean, I played on that one as well, but
Nice.
I didn't really like any of them, to be honest with you.
Okay, that's a valid answer.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. Another one?
When you were still first starting out and you had all the stolen equipment, were you ever afraid at a gig that someone was going to be like, hey man, that's my drum kit?
No, I never thought about it. I was naive, you know.
Yeah. And wasn't there some crazy story about when you guys were interviewing, you were auditioning Johnny in Malcolm's shop, and
Yeah.
he was fucking around and fucking up horribly, and Malcolm was like, tell him to cut that shit out, or I'm gonna kill him.
No, he didn't say that.
No?
I don't know where you heard that. I was there.
Yeah. And you, I think you narrated a movie about this crazy football match in a town where the town is divided and there's a ball and they try to get the football from one side of the town to the other.
Where'd you hear that?
A friend of mine produced it.
But they didn't use my voice in the end because they recorded it badly, and I went back there to re-record. And have you seen it?
No.
Yeah, it was a mad thing that started. It was two towns, and they'd have this big ball that looked like a melon, and the goal was to get it to this one place. It wasn't a football, but you put it, and they used to beat the shit out of each other, and it was a whole thing. It was a shame, really, because I really liked the idea of it, and I did the voiceover for it. But the guys who recorded it didn't record it right, and they wanted me to re-record it. And I went down there to. They told me they had a couple of lines they wanted me to do, and they were bullshitting me. And I don't like being bullshitted. And basically, they wanted me to do the whole thing again. What are you nodding for? You're saying no. That was what has happened. And that's my manager, by the way. And so if they would have said that, I would have done it gladly, that they messed it up. But they tried to con me into doing it, so I didn't end up doing it.
You want me to talk to him?
But no, I think they used someone else in the end because I didn't do it. I left when they was bullshit.
Well, that's why I didn't see it, because I found out it wasn't actually you doing the narration.
Yeah,
So I
it's a shame.
protested it.
Shame.
All right. We got another question? All right.
I saw you play in the mid-'90s with Neurotic Outsiders,
Yeah.
and I thought it was a really cool project, and I wondered if you could talk a little about that collaboration with the guys from Guns N' Roses and John Taylor from Duran Duran.
Yeah, that was like 95, 96. We were doing these shows at the Viper Room every Monday night, and it was just starting as a loose thing. Me and John Taylor were friends. Duff I met a few times, and Matt Sorum, the drummer, we knew. It was a benefit for someone on a Monday night at the Viper Room. We continued to do it. It turned into this thing, and then Guy O'Siri from who was kind of working at Maverick at the time, signed us, gave us $1 million. Can you believe that? That would never happen now. Give you $1 million pesos. So we did a record, and unfortunately we weren't really there to promote it. I was doing the Sex Pistols tour. Duff was getting word that Guns N' Roses was getting back together, and so it kind of all fell apart, which was a shame. I think we could have got more mileage out of it if we would have paid more attention to it. It's just one of them things. It's a good record, produced by the guy from, oh man, what's his name? No, Elton John plays like this. No, what was his name? No, he's not a keyboard player. He was in. Ah, fuck.
Ray Charles.
No, hold on. This drives me crazy. This stuff. Jerry Harrison.
Oh, Talking Heads.
Talking Heads. He produced it. Yeah. So he did play a bit of keyboard, right? Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, it was a fun project, that.
Okay, so as we finish, oh,
Hold on.
Another question?
I'm not sure if I heard this right or not, but during the Olympics, they were playing Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, unfortunately, in America, you didn't get to see it because NBC cut it out.
Right. But the crowds were there. That's the bottom line. The people
Well,
were like,
everyone else in the world saw it, except in America. And
I assume it wasn't God Save the Queen?
God Save the Queen was in the beginning for like about just before the lyrics started, when it was going down the river. But in the actual show, there was a bit where they actually spent about a minute and a half, minute 7, where the whole thing stopped and it started, and they used an old footage of us, and he did a whole number. I still haven't seen it, you know. But your question is, what did I think about it? I think it was great.
That's what I'm thinking. I mean, it's like amazing. It's like, here you are, this band that came out there, like you said, just made these songs, didn't know what you were really doing, but just did it with this inspiration and just energy, and that's all it was really about, energy and having a good time.
Yeah.
But then it's like years later, it's like, you know, because the social media or whatever would never accept, say, hey, these guys, you know, they're rock stars or whatever. It's kind of like you're the underdog for a long time.
Yeah.
But then over the years, because the steady fan base and the young kids listening what their dads listen to and whatnot, it's just bam.
Yeah.
Great inspiration.
Thank you. I think that scenario will probably never happen again. It was only purely through Danny Boyle, his insight of the history of England. Basically, that's what the opening ceremony was about, you know. And I hated listening to it in America with these idiots talking, like joking about. I mean, they didn't even know what they're talking about. Whoever the interviewers were. Do you agree? Did you see?
I hate that commentary.
Oh, it's horrible.
All over everything. It's like,
I know, just spoiling it.
So I take it well, let me ask. Mick Jagger got knighted. If you were offered a knighthood, would you take it?
No,
All right.
I don't think so.
There's a chance. There's a chance. Okay.
I couldn't face myself to do it, I don't think. Even if I wanted to in the back of my mind, so Steve Jones. You know, I don't know. I don't think it would be. Do you get anything? Do you get any benefits from it?
I know nothing
Health
about
insurance
it.
or
Everybody
something?
calls you sir.
I heard that Ben Kingsley gets upset if you don't call him sir.
I heard that too.
See
I
that-
don't know if it's true, but I heard it.
Well, I heard it too, so it must be true.
All right.
That-
All right.
that's
The Queen's got a good sense of humor, though.
I thought it was great that she actually was at. I thought it was one of them look-alike queens with the guy, the James Bond guy, in the Buckingham Palace. I thought that was outrageous. That would never have happened 20 years ago.
Yeah, and then they had that one where she jumped out of a plane.
Well, that weren't her.
All right, so let's finish up here with, it's 35 years ago, around about, maybe a month from now, Sex Pistols released this lean, mean, Never Mind the Bollocks, changed the world, and now it's being reissued as a deluxe box set, 4 discs, a whole bunch of other goodies. Tell the world why they should buy the reissue.
Oh, I don't want to tell them to buy it. No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, it's, you know, like I said, it's one, you know, basically, it's one album we did, which is an achievement in itself. We were together for like 3 years, right? One album. I think that in itself, I like the fact that that is it, and not 10 albums. But, you know, this Universal, I think, are doing a great job. They've dug up all this other stuff that I didn't even know existed. And if you're a fan, if I'm a fan of something, even though it's like, but I've kind of got it all, I still want it, you know? And no, you know, you don't have to buy it. No one's forcing you to buy it. But there is some funny stuff on that. For me, I don't know if anyone's going to be interested, but it's me and Paul Cook screaming at each other for about a minute. I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. You know, there's a bunch of outtakes. You know, if you're into the band, you'll enjoy it if you're a fan. You know, and it looks pretty, and there's a bunch of pictures that I've never seen before.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, hold on.
Oh.
I'm Jonesys Jukebox Twitter and Jonesys Jukebox Instagram. I'm no longer on Facebook.
All right.
Thank you.